This video is about replacing the battery in a Chevrolet Venture. This is a 2002 Oldsmobile Silhouette, Pontiac Montana, or Transport, and several other models. When a battery is disconnected, the engine computer loses its memory, and it will relearn, but it's optional to use a device that will keep power to the car and prevent that. We'll need a 10mm and 13mm socket, a ratchet, and extensions, and either an 8 or 15-inch wrench or socket, and then a wire in an S shape. You can see by this chart here, a 5/16 and an 8mm are almost identical. You can remove the weather strip and the plastic cover easily, and then takes a 10mm to get the bolt off the fuse panel on this model. Now some of those are mounted a little bit differently. The fender brace takes 10mm front bolts, which are fairly easy to get off usually. And if you don't have air tools but you have a drill, you can get an adapter that'll make it easy to pull those bolts out. The back brace on the fender is a 13mm, and you do need an extension to get back into there. Once you get the bolts out, it's pretty easy to pull out that brace. And then you need to swing that whole fuse panel and all the wiring that goes with it up out of the way, and that's where this piece of wire comes in that you can hook over it and hook it to the vehicle to keep that out of your way. The side terminals take either an 8mm or 5/16" wrench. I found it was pretty hard to get a ratchet down in there, and a wrench worked just about as well. You always want to make sure to remove the negative terminal first, because if you put a wrench on the positive and you happen to touch a ground with your wrench, you could get a spark, which is dangerous around a battery. If you're just disconnecting the ground, you can put the fuse panel back out of the way. To remove the battery, though, we need to pull the red plastic cap off the positive terminal now and remove that. And then there's a bolt that holds down the battery in the back, which takes a long extension with a 13mm socket. And sometimes those get pretty rusty. This one was pretty easy to get out, but I've heard they can get very stuck. And if you do need to clean up the battery, if there's any corrosion, you might mix up baking soda and water and wash that off. And you can always put Vaseline on the terminals when you put it back together to prevent that. Batteries are heavy, so be careful when you lift it out of there if your back is at all fragile or you don't want to hurt yourself. But getting the new battery in can be a little bit of a challenge. Make sure there's nothing in the way. I had to tilt this way up and send it in vertically to get it down into that space, and push the wiring out of the way. But once I got it in there, it fit just fine. So make sure that it's sitting flat, and then we can put our hold down clamp back on it and reinstall that with the 13mm socket and long extension. Make sure that's good and sturdy. Then we can put our positive cable on first, snap the plastic cover on that, and then do the negative cable last. And like I said, you can coat those with Vaseline if you're worried about corrosion. Mine didn't seem corroded at all. I swung the fuse panel here back into place and then put the bolt back in there. Slide the brace back in and the bolts for that. And then go around and make sure everything's tight. Some of those fuse panels mount on the side of the body there. And then put the plastic cover back and the weather strip. Then you want to check and make sure the vehicle starts and runs and that everything works right. And you'll need to reprogram the clock if you did have the power disconnected. And the vehicle may run a little rough until it relearns the right settings. So please subscribe to our channel, check out our other videos. We hope you enjoyed this, and feel free to leave comments below.